Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Politics is Life. My name is Yetunde Makinde. Today's content is titled Domestic Abuse, a Rebuttal. If you're familiar with this channel, you must have noticed that I tend to discuss strictly politics and philosophy. However, I woke up at about 3 days ago. I woke up and found my phone had been bombarded with content that centered on domestic abuse. And because my take on the issue does have a philosophical slant to it, that's why I'm discussing it. To be candid, I'd seen the trend domestic abuse on Twitter some 5 days ago. I just didn't get on it because, like I said, I don't like to get on issues unless it has an element of politics or philosophy in it. So I really do not know the event that has caused for domestic abuse or the incident that has caused for domestic abuse to be trending. At any rate, I got up and looking through my phone, I found the first content that I looked at when I first grabbed my phone 3 days ago was this video that showed a man who was headbutting this woman into a wall or what appeared to be a door. I then asked the friend who sent it to me if we know the people or if I'm supposed to know them. He answered in the negative. I then thought to myself, why didn't you send it to me? But hey, that's what people do. The second video that I saw, which forms the basis of this content, showed a gentleman on a TV program who was trying to share his perspective on why men batter their wives. As far as I know, the arguments he put forth are flawed and are logical fallacies. He argued that no man is insane, that no man just wakes up one day and begins to assault his wife, that what we see, which is the assault, is usually a reaction or a response to emotional abuse that the man himself has been subjected to by his wife. He further argued that there are a lot of things a man can put up with, but that no man in the world will put up with being disrespected. The good thing is he didn't qualify it. He didn't say being disrespected by a woman or being disrespected being disrespected by a woman or being disrespected by anybody, a child. He just said being disrespected, which makes it easy to tackle. This person argued that a man won't put up with being disrespected, and that because a woman has a caustic mouth, the woman is always going to has a razor sharp mouth, which is true. Some women really just can't be quiet. They go on and on forever. But how does physically assaulting a woman correct the problem of emotional abuse that the man is being subjected to? It's not a question of two wrongs not making a right. No, that's not what I'm saying here. If a woman emotionally abuses you and you can't deal with it, then leave such a woman. Remove yourself from the situation. Remove yourself from the situation. You don't have to put up with it, really. Separate yourself from the woman. Divorce her or something. Because battering her won't put an end to the emotional abuse. Or send her into therapy. Yeah, that may work. But battering her won't take the problem away. So if a person is arguing that men batter women or that a husband batters his wife because she's disrespectful, my thinking is this: is the home the only place a man gets disrespected? I think not. People, not just men, people, everybody, young and old, male or female, we get disrespected. People disrespect people. Just like there is domestic abuse, there is also workplace abuse. It's a thing. Statistics actually say that 11% of people in employment suffer workplace abuse. And of course, the 11% includes men. And I've never once heard that a man battered his colleague or his boss or his supervisor or his employer on the basis that they disrespected him. A person who is suffering from workplace abuse is bullied, is disrespected, is treated like trash, suffers emotional abuse as well. And of course, I don't condone that. Like I don't condone domestic abuse. Anyone who finds themselves in any of this situation must do everything to remove themselves, separate themselves from it, because it can damage your mental health. So a man who says that, or anyone who argues that a man assaults his wife because he's been disrespected, is just putting forth a weak and lame argument. Any man who assaults his wife because he was disrespected is a weak motherfucker. It's just as simple as that. The only reason why a man will batter his wife at home but would never batter anybody outside his home who disrespects him is because he knows there will be consequences for that action. So what does he do? He exercises self-restraint no matter how mad he gets. He would exercise self-control because there will be consequence for his action. There will be repercussion. If you batter your employer or your colleague, you get charged. You get arrested and get charged, and of course you lose your job. But when you batter your wife, there's no consequence. Society may even blame the woman, you talk too much. Why should you insult your husband? So there will be no repercussion. That's why a man batters his wife. That's just the honest truth. Anybody who argues otherwise is just putting forth a weak argument. A man who batters his wife wouldn't do it if the woman he were married to were as physically strong as he is. You just watch. Any man who is married to a physically strong woman never tries to batter her. If he's not aware she's strong and he batters her once and she breaks his head and he lands in the hospital, he will never try it again. The only reason why a man continues, a habitual batterer continues to do it, it does it because he can get away with it without consequence. There will be no repercussion. This gentleman on the TV program then argued further and introduced scripture, efficient. He started to argue that the woman is to submit to a man and the man is to love the woman in return. At that point, I lost interest. I tuned off because anyone or at any time that anybody begins to use scripture, whether Bible, Quran or the Torah, to support bad behavior, I lose interest in anything that you may have to say. So at that point, I just stopped listening to what that individual had to say. All that talk about submission is the lie and the trap of patriarchy. In a marriage, both parties must treat each other with dignity, respect, and honor. Remember, it's a union of two equal partners, not a master-servant relationship, not a principal-agent relationship or a parent-child relationship. It's a relationship of two equal partners. That's the reality. That's the truth that the world misses. If the religious will insist that submission has to be worked into the relationship between a husband and a wife, in that case, both of them must submit to one another. It can't be a one-way traffic. Once you have two elements once you have two people dealing with themselves, whatever they do has to be reciprocal. It has to be mutual. It can't be a one-way traffic. There will never be peace. For there to be harmony and balance, the two energies of masculine and feminine must coexist as equals. This is actually the principle of polarity, of positive and negative, a principle that permeates the entire universe. It dictates and necessitates cooperative interdependence, a working together of positive and negative forces in their respective complementary roles. To summarize, husband and wife are complementary part of a whole, equal partners who share a common purpose of building a harmonious home. This is the natural, commonsensical order of things. If only societies or the world at large will acknowledge the natural and ordained place of the woman or female in the scheme of things, we did sooner have a sane world. In Isheshe, women are revered and honored. And women are revered and honored, hence put on a pedestal. In Koinle Gelubiri, she's delicate, and as such is treated with honor and is loved. Though it takes a man and a woman to create life, or it takes the male and the female to create life, it's the woman who cocoons and incubates life in a womb or belly, and thereafter brings forth life in its due season. The feminine principle, similar to the principle we call issue, is invoked and venerated as Amoyami. Every Babalawo knows this. You know, just like every Babalawo knows that for every ebo that he prepares, he has to put something aside for issue. In every ebo, Babalawo will put a muscle aside for issue. Akafum issue finshu keshuba kebo dafen lebo. In the same manner, every Babalawo knows that for all that he is doing to work and succeed, it must invoke and venerate Awon Yami, Olokiki Oru, Arugba Shomakanle. The narrative about Eve being made from Adam's bone is a fable. It's important to say this, for the benefit of those who are religious who are watching, and should not be taken as a literal account. The Abrahamic holy books are filled with narratives that defame and dishonor the woman, subordinating her to the man. This gets more interesting. According to Oduifa in Oyakulogbe, Udumari created Nini be Nini, that is one like wine. First, Udumari created Nini be Nini in Ikoleon and brought her to Isalaye to Odudua after having passed her through Oduaru at Odueje. It's important to state that for the most part, the stories in the Odufa are symbolic and not literal accounts. This format of using symbolic language is adopted so as to, firstly, teach moral lessons, and secondly, to preserve the knowledge of the principles that guide our universe. Another thing I need to mention is that I understand why feminists push back on patriarchy. It's because patriarchy chokes and limits. The energy of patriarchy is limiting. But the feminist must recognize and admit that men and women are equal in value but are not equal in nature. Women competing with men, or even worse, women lying to themselves that they're equal to men in nature, is both ridiculous and counterproductive. There is too much anger in feminist movement, especially this second and third wave feminist movement. Anger and ignorance can only further create chaos in an already troubled world. An understanding of the guiding principles of the universe of which our world is a part of will resolve all of humanity's current problems. The apparent unequal power distribution that patriarchal structures enact or engender will crumble if only we will understand these principles, the immutable laws that guide the universe, and live in accordance with these laws. The cooperative principle of masculine, that's positive, and feminine, that's negative force, is applicable all around us. For example, for your vehicle to move, the terminal edge, that's the negative and the positive cables, have to be affixed to the battery itself for your vehicle to be able to move. So that's just a typical example of the cooperative interdependence of positive and negative energy, or positive and negative force. I did state that the feminine energy carries a negative charge or a negative force. This does not connote bad, that the feminine force is bad. It simply means passive, because the masculine positive force is action. The feminine negative force is passive. Understanding metaphysical concepts indeed liberates the mind. Ifa simultaneously enlightens and empowers. The woman who embraces spirituality soon understands her place and role as she comes to terms with her power, her beauty, and strength. She will not feel the need to live as dictated by patriarchy. The pull to fit into societal mold soon dissipates, and will become free to live as her Ori prescribed. She will essentially live on her terms. Now, this does not suggest being slutty. For a woman living on her terms doesn't mean she has to become slutty, wayward, or cantankerous, but living and functioning from that realm of honor that was ours even before time commenced. To wrap this up, I'll summarize one of the verses of Udu Shetura as it embodies or illustrates the cooperative principle of positive and negative, or masculine or feminine force, which are necessary for progress on the earth plane. Oshetura is Ose and Utura. That these two 16 are just two of the 16 main Udu Ifa. Udumari, assigned to a wide range of masculine and feminine force, a myriad of masculine forces and a singular feminine force known as Oshun. He assigned the task of making the earth plane, or he assigns them the task of Udumari assigns them the task of making earth ready for the play that was about to unfold, that was about to be played out on the earth sphere, and to make it habitable for mankind. So these forces made a descent onto the earth plane. They left a column for Isalaye, masculine forces, a myriad of them, accompanied by a singular feminine force, Oshun. When the energies arrived Isalaye, the masculine energies essentially said to the feminine energy, which is Oshun, they said to her, just sit over there and watch us work. And she obliged them. That's exactly how this world works. Women are to be seen and not heard. Women are relegated to the back burner. Women shouldn't have a say, because after all, what do they know? They're the weaker sex. So Oshun obliged and sat there and was moping. And then the masculine forces started the work, or the assignment, or the task of making the earth plane ready for the game that was to play out on it. After a very long time of working at it, they didn't succeed. So they returned to Ikoleorum to make a report to Odumare. So they told Odumare that, look, since we've been on the earth plane in the Salaye, kò sí ohun tá a gbé tó ṣe é gbé, kò sí ohun tá a fà tó fà, and we really don't know why. So Odumare said, okay. So where is Oshun, the feminine energy that I said to accompany you to the earth plane? They said, Oshun. Oh, and it's Salaye. She's on the earth plane. Odumare said, what is she doing there? They responded and said, when we arrived earth, we told her to sit in a corner while we work. Odumare said, then you've been doing it wrong, because Oshun that you've relegated is the one that has the ashe. Oshun lo lashe. Until she puts her ashe, until she's involved in what you're doing, nothing you do will succeed. So the masculine energies were like, really? Odumare was like, really? So they returned to Isalaye, invited Oshun to join them, and only then did all they worked at begin to succeed. So at the end of it, they succeeded because they cooperated, worked together. Any man who wants his life to be peaceable, and by extension, if we truly want to have a peaceable world, we have to restore the female to a place of honor. As a matter of fact, she never left it. Only humanity ignored it. Oshun has never left a place. She's still right in that. She's still sitting on that pedestal, on that place of honor. But our daughters don't know this. A man who wants his home to be peaceable knows to love his mother, to love his wife, to love his sisters, to love his daughters, to love his female friends, to honor them, to protect them, to shield them, not violate them, not rape them, not relegate them to the back burner, not insult them, not assault them, not batter them. You can't possibly do that and expect your life to work. Ọkùnrin tó bá fẹ́ kí ìgbésí ayé ẹ̀ kó tutù mini bí omi tútù, tó fẹ́ kí ọ̀rọ̀ òun kó gún, you must honor women. Up until the energy of patriarchy permeated the world, native cultures live in harmony with nature. That time wasn't perfect. It couldn't have been, because life is a progression, it's progressive. We're supposed to get better as the years proceed. But what's been going on now for thousands and thousands and thousands of years is that humanity has been regressing. And it's all headed toward a peak. If we don't do what we need to do, make do a reversal, and begin to live in accordance with how nature intends, which is to live in harmony with nature, which is that men and women must cooperate, which is that humanity must cooperate with one another. The ideology of patriarchy is that of competition, that people have to compete. People believe if they're not competing, they can't have a headway, they can't make a headway. But how wrong can one, I mean, that's just so wrong. To progress, to move ahead, the only way to move ahead and progress is to work together cooperatively. We must cooperate with one another, not compete. Because we cooperate with one another doesn't mean we can't have, because I know people, I've heard people argue that if you ask us to cooperate, how then people think that the cooperative ideal cannot function in economics, in commerce, but it can. You do your thing, I do my thing, but we don't have to compete, because when we compete, what we're doing is going at loggerhead. And when people are going at loggerhead, you can't move up. You can't move up that spiral evolutionary loop. It's either you become stagnated or you begin to regress. We must cooperate. We must stop competing. We must work together, because that's the natural order of things. For as long as we persist in violating the natural laws, for as long as we continue to do that, we will continue to experience anarchy, confusion, and chaos on the earth plane. We can reverse that by cooperating with ourselves as opposed to competing with one another. So this about brings me to the end of today's content, and I do hope that I've been able to make some sense. If that is the case and you did like to support my team and I'll suggest that you like this content, that you share it. You can also subscribe to the channel. What you can do, however, to make us really happy is to consider making a purchase of my book. It's a political book. It's titled Who Can or Will Save Nigeria? Entire Brigade of Technocrats. The links to where you can make a purchase of both the print and the e-copy are in the description box below. Until I come your way next time, it's Yetunde Olokun saying, be real.